Probably make sure we have our mic here before we honestly get started. Alrighty then. So yeah, we're back. Another great day covering Dungeons and Dragons. Over here, we've been working through our Mind Flayer series, and we are getting towards the end, folks. We are getting towards the end. Coming in hot at the end. Last time we talked about the Elder Brain and how you can run it and the different things you can do to make it threatening. Today we're doing something a little bit different here on Game Master's Arsenal. We are going to be doing a dungeon design. We're actually going to show you guys how to design your dungeons and the best ways that you can use to capitalize on the different advantages that the creatures would have, how to make it exciting for your players, give them a fun little map crawl, that kind of thing. Of course, the good news is, unlike other things, we actually have a reference for how to design these. Because the layout is so structured around the Elder Brain, and these are alien creatures, there's multiple different ways you can design them, and I'm going to touch on it, but I'm not really going to get into it. There could even be ships involved because, you could have their big conch shells. They're astral ships, but those are rare. Most Elder Brain colonies will not have one. Yours probably will because it's more exciting to have one that way. But like I said, getting into it, these have I've got the Mind Flayer up there just for the fun of it. Where is it? Here it's Mind Flayer Colony. The Mind Flayer Colony has a design to it, which is really nice. You can see it up here, and I'll explain it for our audio listeners. The Mind Flayer Colony is settled around the Elder Brain. Now, the Elder Brain usually has a chamber where it meets everything. Then it has a resting pool, a brine pool. It has different vats around, tadpole chambers, areas where the Mind Flayers will rest, and then laboratories. Now, this looks complicated, but when you actually get it down on map, and this is actually what we're going to be doing, and currently I'm getting everything set up for that with a window capture. We're going to be using Dungeon Scrawl today to kind of show you guys how you can do this effectively. Now, as you can see, I've left this up here. We don't usually do this, but I wanted to do it because this is a little bit different. Like I said, it's built around the Elder Brain. There's not a lot of lore here, but it's mostly when you're designing, you'll want to use this as a reference. Don't make it exact. This is also very hard to understand on a flat 2D map because of the nature of the Mind Flayer chambers. They are on top of each other because this is in the Underdark. They do make their layers in the Underdark. They might have entrances to the upper, but they most likely will not. Now, usually how you want to start, like I've said, a colony is built around the Elder Brain. So when you're designing these, I would definitely take advantage of either octagonal or circular shapes. Now, of course, I'm getting everything set up because it takes a little bit of time. Now, when you're designing this, start with the Elder Brain's chamber. Now, you want to keep in mind the size of different creatures, the fact that they are, that this is supposed to be a meeting place for multiple characters. I feel like a 30-foot room would suffice. And I like big maps. I like my big maps. I think a 30-foot room, especially when engaging in a boss fight with this Elder Brain, is a good plan. Although I would probably take it I'd say a 5 square circular radius circle for the Elder Brain's chamber. This will act as either the main boss room or a secondary boss room or an observation chamber where the players first encounter the Elder Brain. Now, part of designing this is also designing your story with it. When you are designing a dungeon, you may not have the opportunity to flat say, here are the different stories that I'm going to the characters, but your environmental storytelling says a lot. Having the different structures, and first of all, making sure it's known that everything is built around this chamber. Now, After that, of course, you want to add another room. The brine pool is right next to it, but right next to the Elder Brain's chamber is also usually a transformation room. This is where the newborn mind flayers enter their slumber. This is where people enter their slumber and complete ceramorphosis. Because of that, because that's what this is, the mind flayer, of course, would want it nearby, but at the same time, they wouldn't want it to be. Close enough to where the things could do harm to them. I think 10 by 10 room hallways would be good. This is going to be a very hallway heavy map. That is because it's a defensive structure. They're just out of a war. They just lost a war, and so they're running with defensive structures. So make a small hallway, probably arc it to the side there, even it out so it looks good, and then, of course, build your new chamber. Now, not every chamber needs to be rounded. The reason why a lot of your chambers will be rounded is to give it that non-Euclidean, but that alien design to the Mind Flayer's chambers. So, like I said, next to the Mind Flayer, next to the Elder Brain chamber, you want a small, probably a longer room because you're going to be holding pods and pod people. I'd say probably a 15 by 10. 10 by 3. Wow. 15 by 10. Good God. That is so big. And what you'll populate this room with is, of course, pod chambers, different kinds of things like that. Pod chambers, you want those on each side. It'll hold, this room will probably have 2 or 3 mind flayers patrolling it, helping the newborn mind flayers. Of course, this is you can also have a side chamber where it's like, oh, yes, specialized creatures that we don't want to deal with. We're just going to pop them over here. Maybe they're spawning chambers for more experimental creatures. I'm talking your beholder mind flayers. They've got specific names. I do not want to learn them yet. We are not going through them. We'll go through them a little bit later on Game Master's Arsenal, but this is also where they'll spawn things like intellect devourers. Now, this is one floor. This will all be one floor. This is where the issue with designing a dungeon comes in. These places have multiple floors. Now, I still keep them on a 2D map. I just say, hey, unless you're going straight down, unless we're building right on top of each other, which you are in this dungeon, you may want to do separate maps for that. If you're utilizing Roll20, or another way to do 3D structures. But this floor here, the Mind Flayer, other than like the spawning pool, you'll also want to have like a hidden little escape chamber for the Elder Brain, and of course that gets you through that. This is a very simple floor. This is going to stand more as a location which the players will come up to, probably from the north, through the transformation chamber to face the Elder Brain. This is a boss room. First and foremost, this is a boss floor. If you're thinking about anything like Zelda design or anything like that, you've got the key, you're coming up, you might go through your little entry area, have a little fight, and then you enter the battle with the Elder Brain. The Elder Brain will be in that main chamber, and that's it. The spawning chambers, maybe your players are smart enough to sabotage them, but this is where things get tricky, because in this little research room where they're doing experiments on that, it's going to go straight down. The issue with building these is that you have the different floors stacked on top of each other, and you guys literally cannot see me. That is my bad, guys. That is my bad. I thought I was able to be seen. Give me just a second. I'm just There we go. Okay, you guys can actually see me now. Now there's a lot going on. I'm going to put myself up here just because I don't want to get in the way. Yes, so the layers are stacked on top of each other. And you can see that in the design that I have on screen there. If you're listening on audio, you're going to have, I recommend doing 3 floors, 2 to 3 floors. 2 to 3 floors. What I recommend is the Elder Brain in the middle, with his tadpole chambers and all of that. A main area below, that's where you'll have different kind of things meeting up. And then, of course, a smaller above area where players can sneak in. I don't think the above area should have direct access to the Elder Brain chamber. Like I said, this is a defensive structure. Having that defensive structure be designed this way helps to keep the Mind Flayers safe, but also alert the Elder Brain to the threat. The Elder Brain needs enough time to respond to it. That's why I actually don't completely agree with the Mind Flayer colony diorama that was in. I think it was Volo's Guide to Monsters. Volo's Guide to Monsters. I don't agree with this because of how easily the access chamber is to the Elder Brain. Now, that can change. That can easily change. Maybe you intend the fight to be in the Brain Chamber. Or maybe the Elder Brain's gone. Maybe they got in, and the Elder Brain immediately fled. How it fled so quickly, ask its Mind Flayers. But that's the thing. It's a defensive structure. So I'd say for your 3rd floor, we're not going to make a new map. We're going to keep this one here. But we are just going to... We're just going to move over to an area where there's nothing here. On that 3rd floor, if you're coming in, maybe there's a split. It goes up and down by the transformation chamber. Maybe the door's locked. Maybe they can't get through it. Maybe they need a key. That's just game design. That's just game design 101. And how you're designing your dungeon, you'll of course edit anything to run it. The 3rd floor where the adult Mind Flayers would live. Where the adult Mind Flayers would live, you will have... Now, it doesn't need to be a functioning living quarter like other locations, but you probably want a small room. I'd just go a small 3 kind of entry room. They won't do as much. You'll, of course, populate this however you'd like. And then a couple of rooms splitting off from it. Now, what these are, because colonies are usually in their infant stages at the point, we don't really get to see too many Mind Flayer colonies big enough to enact the grand design. These chambers will be rather small. These will probably be the homes of the head Mind Flayers, the big guys who the Elder Brain trusts. And then, of course, you would have another hallway going out, and it would stretch a little bit around and up, around. And, of course, these hallways, you could just flavor them as moving up and down. It adds verticality to it. That's the thing. Adding verticality to this is very important because this layout is supposed to be very confusing to the non-defenders. Then you're going to have another structure. Now, what this is going to be is it's going to act as a little bit of an entry area. You're going to put... That'll be your exit and entrance. And then, of course, you would put a little chamber sticking out here. That entry chamber is to act as 2 things. One, as a guard post. The Mind Flayers will be in there. Maybe an Intellect Devourer's guarding the entrance. Outside, the Mind Flayer inside's on guard. Very simple 3rd, and then you'll have like a hallway with another little room where they take captives. And, of course, that can go down into the transformation chamber. See, we're still keeping with very much the design that they have here. We're just kind of explaining our purposes behind building the way we are. And that's important, making sure you are designing with a purpose. Don't make rooms for making rooms when you're building a dungeon for these. You're not making rooms for making rooms. You're designing rooms for a purpose. This entire structure serves a purpose. Now, I don't actually recommend this dropping into this wherever you're dropping into the next floor down. I don't recommend that dropping into the Elder Brain chamber directly. They have this entryway in there coming into the Elder Brain directly. I don't believe that's important or necessary. I don't believe it's a good idea. Just because I know players, they will bulldoze with a familiar, find out where the boss is, and run at the boss. I do not recommend building that way. And as a game designer, you can go, okay, yeah, they can do that. If you're a game designer, you're perfectly fine with doing that. Run it that way. I go, no. I want them to explore this a little bit. I want them to understand the environmental storytelling that goes into this. And when they reach the boss, they appreciate that, oh, hey, they were softening us up. Or this is a trap. Now, would I recommend put a Mind Flayer or an Intellect Devourer here? I'd say probably an Intellect Devourer too. In the main entryway. That's because in the main entryway, it's just going to alert the players. Maybe the colony doesn't have enough Mind Flayers to stock it. Or maybe there's a couple thralls defending it. Mind Flayer thralls are a thing. They're an easy way to populate your dungeon. A couple thralls and an Intellect Devourer defending the entryway. You'd want 1 to 3 Mind Flayers in the living quarters, depending on how tough it is. And then, of course, as in the transformation chambers, you'd want one Mind Flayer. Maybe he's doing and one doing research. Maybe you've got an Ultharid in there doing research. The Elder Brain's right hand is in the transformation chambers doing research, but we're going to get into that more when we populate this dungeon. Right now, we're just designing it. Now, the third level. The third level is the bigger one. So, just like the second level, you're starting with, I would go with a 10. It's going to be a big room. It's the Brine Chamber. You're going to start with the Brine Chamber. This is the core of an Elder Brain, of a Mind Flayer colony. This is where the Elder Brain rests. This is where it lays tadpoles. This is where tadpoles are raised. Usually they have a little bit of a chamber right outside of it. We'll just put it in like this. We'll do a square one just to add a little bit of confusion. Probably a 3x3 room with a small Mind Flayer pool. These are the Mind Flayers that either are being rejected and being devoured, or these are the Mind Flayer tadpoles that are ready to be implanted for ceramorphosis. Now, around the Now, you're going to have a hallway usually out around this. Now, just because of the map design, I'm doing it this way. Essentially, this is going to be a central area. The benefit of this kind of dungeon design is you can get the central area of a Mind Flayer colony, which is wonderful. That central area can be so useful to you. And, of course, it doesn't need to be perfectly designed. There. We're doing it live, so we're not too hung up on any designs. You'll clean it up. What I would actually recommend doing is taking your circle, adding 2 layers around it, and then just putting a wall in. That way it shows that, and this would have multiple entryways into it. Because this is where the illithids want to be. This is where they are doing the majority of their work. The tadpole chambers, that's what this is over here. You'd probably set another one out a little ways. Either they're doing research on the tadpoles, which they're trying to perfect the tadpoles. I know they're trying to perfect the tadpoles, use them for some purpose. Maybe they're experimenting on other creatures. They are trying to enact the grand design, which means they're trying to do a lot. And you're going to have a lot of little rooms that are essentially like either research or dissection areas. And that's because they're either studying their enemies or they're researching how to better enact the grand design. From this room, of course, from these rooms that you have kind of scattered around the tadpole chamber, you're going to have it's going to go out, you're going to have a little hallway, and you're going to have a library. Now, these libraries are not the same as our libraries. I would recommend if you're on this, just do a 5x5, or if you want it a little bit longer, a 10x5 room. what these are is either they do not work on books, but they still inscribe runes. So either rune tablet, scarred rune, or brains themselves, in which they are doing dissections on. They're doing more research. This is also where you might have, because this is where you do dissections, this room will be leading up to the transformation chamber. This room will be leading up to the transformation chamber, definitely. What I would recommend doing is having either floor 3 come all the way down here and kind of put you out on the side somewhere, and then having a separate entryway where they crawl through and not crawl, but walk through into here. And then, of course, this is where they're doing dissections. It's going to be nearby the transformation chamber, because nearby this, or even attached to this, I would actually recommend having it attached to this, you're going to have essentially a prison. This is where the Mind Flayers are preparing the hosts for Ceramorphosis. So what it is they take a host, implant a tadpole, and take them up to the transformation chambers. Pretty simple. They're very minimalistic race. You will not have that too much. From here, you're going to have, of course, more ways out. You might have some extra living quarters break off from here, maybe some thrall quarters. I would definitely split this off, have some thrall quarters over here. It'd be rather small. They don't exactly care about their host too much. Additional Mind Flayer living quarters. This is where the guards will live. You'll just have those out. And, of course, this will be its own entryway. Maybe the third layer can also drop people out into here. So, boop. And there you go. Pretty simple. When you get down to it, it's not a big area. And that's because Mind Flayers, at their core, Mind Flayers are very minimalist. And they are trying to hide these, which means they're not having sprawling cities. Because Mind Flayers don't have sprawling cities, they have these. And so it's like, okay, you've got the brine chamber. Ideally, players enter from here, fight a couple intellect devourers, maybe a Mind Flayer here, fight some thralls in here, or try to break the control on some thralls, come into here. You might have some Mind Flayers wandering around here, but you'll definitely have a Mind Flayer, maybe an Ulatharid, in the brine pool. The brine pool is so important, and the reason why I want to direct players to the brine pool, we'll talk about it more next week, but it's what happens if they don't destroy the brine pools, if they don't burn the brine pools. If they say the brine pools, no, that's some cool environmental storytelling. They go kill the Elder Brain and move on. We're going to talk about next week what kind of problems that makes. Now, back to this. The dungeon design for this is very simple. Depending on your level of players, you're probably just going to have more illithids in here. Very minimalist, very hidden. That's the point. That's the point of a colony. These colonies will grow. The older the colony, the bigger the colony will become. So definitely run with that. There's a lot with the dungeon design in this. This is a lot of game design stuff. GMs, you are game designers. Please remember that. Of course, I'm your GM. I'm the GM. I'm your GM, Isaiah. Thank you for joining us. We'll catch you next time. Of course, if you're watching this live or you're watching this on YouTube and you made it this far, or on audio, join us over here on Twitch. We do an after stream in which we play some games. I can't do Dungeons & Dragons. I'm looking forward to doing maybe some Dungeons & Dragons as we move into the new studio. This will probably be the last time in the studio, which is why, for once in my life, never mind, I'm not turning off the green screen. We are moving to a new studio. We're moving to a closer studio. So that's why you haven't seen much of us. You might have seen our pictures on the social media of us taking pictures of the new studio. We are moving away from our studio here. I don't know if the green screen will make a comeback. It might make a comeback. But overall, we're glad to be in the space that we are. We got to thank everyone that's helped us get here. join us in our new studio. Join us for the after stream. Today we are, I believe we're doing more Stellaris. No, today I've got to get some work done. We got to finish setting up the studio, so there's no after stream today. Wow, we are way off the cuff today. Thank you for joining us. Hit that follow, hit that subscribe, hit that like, leave a comment. We'll catch you next time.